In the presentation that we see here, we explain how to use the sharing of users or any extension. So in the sample, we will give you here a situation where you have a master website, and we will create a fresh slave site 1 in which we will have the users. Based on this website, we would like to share the user for other websites. So we would like to have a slave 1A and B that will share the users of slave 1. To do that, we will create a replication rule that will share the slave 1. So to achieve this objective, the procedure consists to share the user. We will create the slave 1 website, define the rules to share the user with the slave 1. To do that, we will create a GMS template slave 1 S1 that use the slave 1, and we will later create children website sharing the slave 1 users using the rule that we have just created here. So the first operation will consist to create a slave 1 website, and based on this website we will create the rule. So we've used our demo website in which we will create the slave site. Slave 1. Here we will use a subdirectory and use the standard directory structure. And that's all. So we let everything. Here we will deploy the site underscore v. That you can see site directory, that is the URL of the full path to the multi-site site directory. So we save, and now we have slave 1 that will use, as you can see, full URL master demo and slave 1. And if we go there and we open a new tab, we should have a Joomla installer because we start a fresh Joomla. So here I set up a slave. In my case, username and database is identical. Password, and very important, define a specific table prefix. In my case, I will give a special name. Okay. Okay. demo slave 1. Okay, so now I can go on the admin of this website and I have a fresh website with more link. So if we return in the management of the master website, here we will have the additional parameters that will be displayed. So now we have the title of the website, the definition of the website. So we have achieved the first objective, that is consists to create the slave 1. So we are here, we have slave 1, the path, the 3 parameters that we have entered, a master website and a slave 1. So now we can go to the next step, that consists to create a rule. So now we will create the rule for the replication. So we will create a share slave 1 template. We will say, okay, when we create a website or a children website, use this rule for the domain name. How to create the table prefix. We will deploy in a specific directory, in our case /multisite linear. We will say use the slave 1 to create the children website. We will have a review of the folders and files that must be replicated, or in this case the symbolic links that will be to be created. We will also review the sharing rules, and this is in this panel that we will define which kind of user or extension that we want to share. So in practice, we go in the template, we define the rule, we create a new rule. For the moment we see command and folders and files, and nothing very important. Slave share slave 1. We say, okay, we want to share slave 1, so we will select the website that we want to replicate, and when we have selected that, we automatically receive new panel here that we will see later with the sharing information. So now we can enter the rule. So we say, okay, when we create a children website, the domain name by default is this one. So site URL will be replaced by the master website in this case. So master demo /. Multi-site is a subdirectory because in our case we will deploy the slave site in this subdirectory, and we will use a site ID that will be used to create the slave site. So when we will put, for example, slave underscore 1a, that will be replaced by slave underscore 1a. We will define the table prefix, the rule for the table prefix to be automatic. For example, slave, and I will put a rule site ID, because in my case I have already the name of site ID underscore. I say, okay, deploy the slave site in this directory. So in fact, it will be deployed in here at the root directory slash multisite slash the name of the site ID. So here I don't put anything more. I've not specified the new DB, so I will replicate the website in the same DB. If you want to replicate in another DB, you can provide the parameter for the other DB. But in this case, I prefer to use the same DB because for the demo, perhaps you don't have the privilege to create sharing tables between different databases, so depending of the user privilege. So first, we will do a quick review of the directories that we will replicate. So here, for example, this directory I ignore, it's a temporary or a backup. And hello world I will ignore. Perhaps DHT access I will prefer to make a copy. Robot perhaps also. This is what you have to review to say, okay, this will be the directory structure of the target slave site. So here, when we create slave1.a, we will have only the directory. And for the sharing, now the most important thing is to identify what you want to share. So you have the user sharing. Here you can share only the standard Joomla users, but if you have VirtueMart that is installed, you could also share only the user of VirtueMart, but you can also share all VirtueMart. Here below we give the tables that are shared, and we use standard rules for access control, the sessions, and so on. So if you have a look on that, this will create a link between tables. Be careful that this operation must be done when you create the database. If you have decided to not share the users, you will not be able to share the user in the future. You cannot change the configuration of a database after its creation. This is an operation that is performed at the creation of the database. So if you expect to do extension, and in most of the case when you share, for example, event lists, you see that you need to share the user and the session, because in the event list there is a reference to the user. So you cannot share, for example, the event list if you don't have the user and session. So if you have a look here, it's equivalent to share the standard Joomla users plus the event list. Generally, when you have extension, very frequently you have also the standard Joomla users that are shared. So you have community builder that shares the Joomla plus the community builder, and you can select. So the radio button is or this one or this one or this one, and the checkbox are or, so you can both share VirtueMart user and all community builder and all Joomla social and things like that. So let's suppose we will do that, and we will share, or I will choose, for example, only this one. Okay, and we will define the rule. So until here we have nothing except define the rule for the replication. So now that we have defined the rule for the replication, we will apply the rule and we will create a clone of the slave1, because in the replication rule we will use slave1, and we will create our first slave1a that will be based on this row. So we return in the manage site and we will create slave underscore 1a that is based on a template sharing that say, okay, here it is the rule. Everything is computed by default. Remember that we have put here the table prefix that will be used. So this will copy the database M12SL1 table prefix into this one. We give here demo slave 1a, and you can see that the default directory will be cited here, so we have nothing more to do. We can save, and this will copy the database. So we have now this database with a copy of the first one. And if we have a look now with the tool, we can try to see the difference. So here we have the directory structure that we showed before. We have a master website, we have a slave 1, and we will have a slave 1a that depending on the previous one. So here we can see the definition of slave 1. Slave 1 use sharing S1, that is this database and so on. We can have a look on the extension. So here we have the table of all the elements that are present in the master website. So all the components that are public, system and so on, are not displayed here. You have what you have in your template, so in your parent, and what you have in your extension. You have different symbols that say, okay, you can, here the table exists, here you have the possibility to also share or install an extension from another one. So for example, GCE is not present in the template, but you can share from the master. So when you have a minus, this means that you can only install from a master website. And this is the same for the module. And here, for example, for the module, we see that the module of standard Joomla use a sharing information that share the table M12SL1 session. It's not only this one, but I think I display the first one. So you have the same with the plugin. So for example, the different plugin can potentially share some information, and user Joomla share the information of the users. So for example, GCE plugin is not installed and it is not defined in GMS, so there is perhaps a risk to define it, but it is displayed. And when you have a look now, in all the tables present in your database, you have the list of the tables that are present in your master website. So in the master, you have all in the template, so slave 1, and sometimes you can see that you have for this site, so slave 1a, you have in fact not a table, so not a physical copy, but a link to another table. So here you have, remember, access control that was defined as a sharing table. So all core ACL tables underscore here are shared because they are defined like that in GMS. And you can have a look on all the components that we have here, so the users, sessions, and so on. A remark, perhaps you remember that we have enable other elements like a Joom social community builder and things like that. They are not present because that was not installed in the template that we have replicated, so you don't have that in the final list. So event list, I think it's profiler or something like that. But here you have the list of all the elements that was present in the master website. So this conclude with this element. An information also for those who want to replicate or create later information. When you are on a slave 1, you have different possibilities and you can propagate or override information. So for example, event list is for example defined here. You can see again the list of the patterns that are replicated when you copy and the patterns that are used when you share the event list. So it will apply those rules to create the children, and you can say for example share from the master and also propagate to the slave side and potentially override the content, because if for example you want to refresh the content of the tables, you can say okay, ignore the present table, delete them and recreate them. So if you have for example a website in development and in production and you want to replace few elements, this is also possible. So when you have multiple children here, you can here in slave 1 say okay, refresh all your children. This concludes our presentation.